Hey everyone, this is Christine with LeftSideArt, and today I have another art journal layout for you. I'm working in my large dilution art journal, and every month I create one of these layouts and then post free downloadable layouts that you can get off my website. The links are below. And what I like to do starting with any of these layouts is make sure I adhere 2 pages back to back. The paper in this book is already pretty thick and very nice to work on, but I use pretty heavy embellishments in my layouts, and adhering 2 pages together at a time just gives it a little extra durability. So the first step in creating a layout is creating a background, and I am using a pad of paper by Color Book that I found on Amazon. It's a 12 by 12 pad, and it's pretty nice. The sheets are pretty thin, so using them as a background here doesn't really add too much bulk to my journal. I just found a few pages that I liked and adhered them with gel medium by Art. And I coat the backs of the paper and on the actual art journal itself, and then I cover the pages on the front with the gel medium anywhere that I think that I might want to apply other paints or some type of color to it later. It just helps seal the paper down so it's not as absorbent as regular dry paper would be. And I'm using this little brush by Tim Holtz. It's really nice to use for applying this type of gel medium or gesso or whatever. It really helps create a really thin layer across your page. The second step of creating a layout is choosing a focal object. It could be one main piece with lots of little things going around it, or there's a lot of different things you could do. I was trying to use these butterflies, which I am not using, to create some type of movement in my background. But because this is an art journal and I will have to close it when I'm done, it was just getting too bulky, too much going on. So the clock and the leaves that I am using are pretty thin. Some of them are like a really flexible thin chipboard. Others are slightly more durable type of thin wood. But in any case, just be aware that if you do want to add more embellishments that are bigger and bulkier, definitely go with a canvas or a canvas board. You can apply these same concepts to those with no problem. And actually probably would have worked out better if I would have gone that route with this type of layout. But usually when I'm creating these, I honestly don't even know what I'm going to do going into it. Might have a general idea of the colors or the concept, but things change when you're working. Now this is a drywall tape that it's pretty sticky. If you just tear it apart a little bit, it gives it, a little bit more of a rustic feel. And it's really good for adding a little bit of texture to your background without having to use some type of paste and stencils and such. And it's pretty cheap. You can get it at a hardware store. Same thing with this cheesecloth. It's very thin and you can move it around. This stuff is really good for Halloween type of, spooky themes because it looks a little, spider webbish. But this stuff goes forever. The cheesecloth and the drywall tape, I mean, it comes in, there's so much per one small package that, you'll have plenty to last you for a very long time. I just use a little bit of gel medium to apply the cheesecloth and it'll stick pretty well. These wood pieces were just a little too plain for me, so I'm adding some Versamark, and then I am going to use some metallic embossing powder. I wasn't too careful about covering these pieces up completely. I really just wanted to give it some sheen and a little bit of metal-like appearance to them. And because these are wood, the Versamark did soak up pretty easily. It's not even, I say real wood, it's kind of like this spongy, flexible wood type of material they use to create these pieces. So if I was going to do this again and if I would want complete coverage, I might have had to do this twice, but this was good enough for the type of effect that I was going for. And I just used a heat tool to set that powder, and as it sets you could see it changing from a powder to more of a metallic sheen. And this is the same effect you would get if you used gold or white, but this was kind of a metal color embossing powder. And it's hot too, so try not to hold these with your fingers. That's why I'm using metal tweezers. Since I'm creating this background for September, I kind of want to go with a little bit more of a fall theme, and I wanted to pull some of that rustic orange out of the background and really make it more of a prominent color. So within that same pad of paper that I started with, there was this orangey color that I thought went really well with this background. And like I said before, a lot of things change as I'm working. I just kind of keep adding things as I think are needed. And gluing this down, again, use the gel medium and make sure you do both sides of the paper, underneath it and on top of it. For the embellishment pieces where it is a little bit heavier of an object, I do rely on Eileen's tacky glue quite a bit just to make sure things really stick. These scissors I'm using are from Tim Holtz, and they're the large scissors, and they are super sharp, but I love them. It was probably one of the better investments I've made recently. I have them in 2 or 3 different sizes, definitely worth getting. In any case, here's the Eileen's tacky glue, and it does dry clear, so even though I have it kind of spread randomly across these pieces that don't have solid backs, you won't really see it once it's dry. I just randomly add pieces until I like the way it's looking, and I am adding these gears, which is probably one of my more favorite embellishments to use. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll definitely notice that I rely on these gears quite a bit. But they had a nice metallic sheen to them, which also played off of that embossing powder I used on the wood veneer pieces. I wanted to add a little bit more color, and so I'm using white craft paint and then Gilt and Sedona by Dina Wakley. And with my splatter brush and just a little bit of water, I just add some of these colors throughout the background and nice little splatters here and there, more or less tying together everything that I have been using. Now I'm going to add some rust paste. This stuff is really nice. It ends up looking like rust, and it goes on a little wet, and if your jar starts to dry out a little bit, just add a couple of drops of water to it to reactivate it. But I just used a palette knife and add it to my embellishments, and it only takes a couple minutes to dry. But what it does is it, especially on metal pieces, it really does make it look like the piece has rusted over time. I added some rust paste with mint green color to complement the reddish brown. It just helps add to the patina effect. And this takes us to our last step in creating layout, which is creating your message. This Live in the Moment chipboard piece here comes from a Tim Holtz set that I'm sure you've seen me use in my other layouts. And I use Eileen's tacky glue to hold it down. Now, usually about this stage, I'm pretty much wrapping up my layout, and maybe I'll tweak some things here and there, add some highlights or darken the shadows. But after I created my message, I wasn't too happy with how plain this was. So even though this is an art journal book that I'll have to close up, I did go back and add some flowers. I got some flowers that played off the colors that were in the background just to give this a little bit of softness. I just thought it was too flat, and these might get a little smashed once I close my book up. But I took pictures of this layout and posted them on my website, where you could download the background for free for the month of September. It does have September 2018 imaged on top of it. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.